Oh, just how loving he was to me. I was his only daughter, only child, so I kind of gotten, I'll say, spoiled a bit. And he was just always, wherever we went, it was sit next to me, arm around me, just very loving person, and always teaching me the right things in life and how to give back. And that's what he did. He worked with people from a mission down in Milwaukee for men that had alcoholic problems, and he would help a couple of them, bringing them up here to his cottage on Clark's Lake, and they would do work if they didn't drink. And he kind of helped a couple, one in particular that I remember, to stop completely drinking. So he really did a lot of good in his life that I knew about. But the ships, it was a very lonely life, I feel, for him being out there as much as he was. That was his career. And he went all over the world and sent dolls from all over the world and postcards, and I'm in Istanbul and I'm here and I'm there. But I never knew the names of the ships he was on. I didn't know how big it was for him to get on the Fitz. And he was third assistant engineer on the Fitzgerald, but he took second. He was to be second, but someone outranked him, so he was third. Yeah. Oh, I was in high school. I was in history class, and I got called out on the speaker to go to the office immediately, and I thought, I didn't do anything wrong. What's going on? And they just told me, you have to go home now. And I had to take 2 buses home. Pius High School wasn't close to where I lived, so I got on the bus and took it home, and I walked in the door, and I'll never forget the quiet of the house. It was very still. You couldn't hear a bird, you couldn't hear anything, and my grandmother and my mother were just sitting on top of the phone and waiting. And that's when I said, who died? And my mother said, you need to sit down. We are waiting for confirmation that your dad was on the Edmund Fitzgerald. There was one man who did not board the Fitz that got sick. We're praying it was him, you know. And as hours and hours, it seemed like eternity went by, we finally got the confirmation that Dad was on the ship for sure. And that's when my whole world changed after that. So it came then, and then we traveled to the Maritime in Toledo, Ohio, and his car was waiting there from when he dropped it off, and a picture of me in his driver in his glove compartment, and it was just very surreal that he's not coming back. So
this exhibit, every maritime museum on the Great Lakes knows that this year everyone needs to have an exhibit on the 50th anniversary of the most famous shipwreck, the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, that happened 50 years ago this November. But what's special about it here in Sturgeon Bay is that 2 of the 29 people on board are from this town, from this community. And while we were in the initial stages of planning the exhibit, we were listening to the radio transmissions from the Arthur Anderson, and knowing that the last transmission from the Fitzgerald was, we're holding our own. Realized that it had a couple different meanings. Yes, it's the last transmission of the ship, but as the Maritime Museum in Sturgeon Bay, where 2 of the 29 were lost, we're holding our own. And this is focusing on those men, those local men who still have family here in our neighborhood, and their history and what that loss means to this community.
Well, I am work with the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society, and am getting ready to publish the 2nd edition of a book that I wrote 10 years ago called The Legend Lives On, which is a pictorial history, like a coffee table type book about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Of course, this November is the 50th anniversary of the sinking, so we are putting out a new edition of the book in observance of the 50th anniversary. So I'll be talking a little bit about the original, a little bit about the wreck itself, and then a little bit about the new edition. As we kind of hoped, in the 10 years that have elapsed, a lot of interesting historical images and other ephemera have come out into the public view, into our collection of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. So the new book is 50 pages longer than the original, and shows off a lot of that material. And then I was lucky enough to go along on the last trip of the Arthur M. Anderson, which is the vessel that followed the Fitzgerald that night in 1975. She has been placed into long-term layup as of January of this year, and it's not clear if she'll ever sail again. So I went with the boat on potentially its last trip back in January. So that's new as well. I think for me, what it drives home is the fact that the Fitzgerald, it was a real outlier, which is to say hundreds of millions of tons of ore and coal and grain move on the Great Lakes without any heartburn whatsoever, let alone a catastrophe like the Fitz that is still haunting people 50 years later. It's very unusual. So here we are on the Anderson, 70 plus years on since she was launched, and she's just out there doing her business day in, day out, 9 months out of the year. Like 99.9% of all the other ships on the Great Lakes. Right, and of course, you can't talk about that legacy without talking about the song, which I happen to be a Gordon Lightfoot fan. I like to point out, a fan before the song, or not because of the song, but that song is so brilliant, and I think he even thought it was, if not his finest work, among his finest work. And so every year it comes on the airwaves, and it is so haunting that it just grabs people. And even people who might not know anything about the tale, the story, or may not even live in the Great Lakes region are familiar with the song. And as a consequence, I would wager she's the second most famous shipwreck in the world. Part of the Titanic being at the top of the pile. So that is a dubious distinction, but nevertheless, that's the reason people are so interested, I think.